Hi again. I'm now reacting to what if Anakin was born during the Empire era. Well, the era, when the Empire's being made. Let's just get started. The channel will be in the link to the description below. Subscribe, like, and share. And then the channel will be in the description below and watch. If you want to watch the original video for yourself, I'll put the link in the description below. Put the channel in the description below if you want to watch the original video.
What if Anakin Skywalker was born during the Imperial era of Star Wars? Now, how does this work exactly? Well, we're just gonna assume basically that the events of Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith still played out in Palpatine's favor. So everything, kinda happened, and he'll kind of explain it in this video as well from his point of view. So, hope you guys enjoy this. I really love this video. Been writing it a lot, one of my longer ones, so hope you guys enjoy as well, and let's get right into it. Our story begins on Coruscant, as Emperor Palpatine is overlooking the great city from his throne. For 9 months, he has reigned as Emperor of the Galaxy, and today something was off in the Force. It was as if the darkness that he always felt was being infected with a spark of light, born from nothing. As Palpatine meditated on what this could be, he remembered his life before the Empire. Years ago, he started it all with the invasion of Naboo. During this, he was elected Chancellor, and then killed his master, Darth Plagueis. Unfortunately, his prized apprentice Darth Maul was killed by Obi-Wan Kenobi after Maul killed Qui-Gon. This was no issue, as Sidious adjusted to everything extremely well. He found a disgruntled Jedi, Dooku, and turned him to the dark side. For years, Sidious and Dooku worked together, sowing conflict in the galaxy, all while the Jedi Order stayed completely loyal to the Senate. Sidious was always searching for an apprentice to replace Dooku, but none was ever truly worthy. Obi-Wan Kenobi had an anger to him, but the light would always overcome it. Obi-Wan's Padawan, Ahsoka Tano, was also an option, but she was too young. In the end, Palpatine decided after Dooku and Grievous were killed off as necessary sacrifices that he would execute Order 66. Ahsoka was killed at the temple, having never left the Order, but Obi-Wan and Yoda were two of the only known survivors. They battled Sidious together at the end of it all, but ultimately they were forced to retreat thanks to clone reinforcements. Now the two of them were out in the galaxy, retired, exiled, dead. It didn't matter to Sidious. They were no match for him and the building Inquisitorius program. The Grand Inquisitor would be his new apprentice, but he would more so just handle the dirty work of the Empire, while Sidious learns to become immortal. The galaxy was his to rule, and he felt unstoppable, disregarding the touch of light that he felt emerge somewhere in the galaxy. At the same time, Grand Master Yoda, exiled on Dagobah, felt the light as well. Had this spark occurred before the Empire, it would have gone unnoticed, because the light side was overwhelming the Force. But with the shroud of darkness over the galaxy, Yoda realized that perhaps, in time, a new hope would emerge. And on the planet Stujon, Obi-Wan was too distracted to feel this emergence of light. After the war, he and Yoda separated, and while Yoda went into exile, Kenobi had returned to his home world for the first time, and he was aiding Captain Rex as he was trying to form a clone resistance. Rex served with him and Cody, but luckily removed his inhibitor chip before Order 66. Kenobi was deeply saddened over the Jedi massacre, especially his own Padawan Ahsoka, and he distracted himself with this clone rebellion. And while all of this was going on in the galaxy, a boy was born without a father. When Palpatine wiped out the Jedi, the Force retaliated to this sudden shift of the Force, and the midichlorians created this boy. Anakin Skywalker was born on the planet Numidian Prime, to a woman named Pernilla Skywalker. Pernilla was a poor woman, stuck on this planet working countless hours as a mechanic, in a shop owned by a Rhodian that was rude and underpaid his employees. Pernilla was the only woman working here, and she didn't know what she was going to do once she was pregnant, but she recently met a nice young man named Nari, who Pernilla trusted to watch Anakin while she was at work. It was an unfortunate planet to live on, as Numidian Prime was full of the worst kinds of businesses and the worst people, but it was not easy to get off of without tons of credits. and Nari was secretly a Jedi that survived Order 66, but he was determined to continue fighting the Sith in time. After Order 66, he traveled to Numidian Prime and he found Pernilla, who was carrying young Anakin. Nari quickly felt the strength in the boy, and he befriended Pernilla, hoping that perhaps he can train Anakin someday. And so Anakin would grow as a little boy on Numidian Prime under Nari and Pernilla for 5 years, learning to walk and talk in a planet full of scum. During these 5 years, the clone rebellion led by Kenobi and Rex would fall short, and the two of them would go in separate directions, both into their own exile, as nearly every clone in the Resistance was killed. Kenobi would continue hiding out on Stujan, separating himself from everything, as he only continued to lose everything. And at 5 years old, Nari would convince Shmi to let him teach Anakin to use the Force, assuring Pernilla that it will not draw attention. After some arguments, Pernilla would allow it, and Nari would help little Anakin float objects, introducing him to the basics of the Force. At this point, Anakin and Pernilla were super well connected as mother and son, and Anakin began to recognize the terrible state of the galaxy, especially this planet. This would go on in extreme secret for 3 more years, as life would go on with Pernilla working to make just enough money to survive, while Nari would teach Anakin even more of how to use the Force. Nari and Pernilla would also emphasize every single day that Anakin was a good person in a galaxy of not-so-great people, and that was more important than any power. He was not evil, and the Empire nor anyone else could ever take that quality away from him. But every day, it became more risky, as the Empire was hunting down anyone who seemed to be a Jedi, and making an example of them. And one day, a group of bounty hunters including Bossk, Boba Fett, and Dengar were in the main town that Anakin lived in, and Dengar spotted Anakin using the Force, while inside of a food market with his mother. Bossk, Boba, and Dengar were tracking Saw Gerrera, and they stopped here for some intel, but now Dengar felt they could make some extra money off the Empire by turning in this boy as a Jedi. Bossk and Boba didn't like the idea, saying it would draw unwanted attention to them, and the Empire wasn't always so kind. But Dengar went behind their back and contacted the Empire, informing them of a possible Jedi. The next morning, Pernilla opted to let the young Anakin sleep in, and she went down to pick up some breakfast. Nari was next door, so she felt fine leaving Anakin for a bit to surprise him with his favorite fruit, Melu Run. It was her first day off in a long time, and she was excited to spend it with Anakin. And as soon as Anakin woke up, he heard the familiar sounds of commotion outside. Gamblers, scavengers, smugglers, hunters. Numidian Prime was home to the worst of the worst, but there was a mutual respect amongst many of them. They all did their illegal business, and no one got in each other's way. But today, Anakin heard something else as he was waking up. It sounded like a large ship descending to the ground, and Anakin looked outside to see a Phi-class Imperial shuttle. Although he was only 8, Anakin knew a ton already about ships, but it was very rare to see an Imperial ship around here. Anakin called out for his mother, but there was no response. And he looked out the window again to see the shuttle ramp descend, and within seconds, everything went terribly wrong. A battalion of stormtroopers ran down the ramp, and they began firing at citizens all around the market. They didn't care who it was. The troopers just opened fire, killing anyone in sight. Anakin hid himself, calling again for his mother, but there was no response. An explosion shook the house, and after another minute, the firing ceased. Anakin looked out the window again to see a Powin man ignite 2 sides of a lightsaber. He used a sort of voice amplifier to make himself heard, and he told the people here that there were reports of a Jedi. The Grand Inquisitor said that a Jedi is the last straw for Numidian Prime, and it is time for all the crime here to be put to a stop. And with a wave, the troopers ran back towards the people, continuing their massacre, as the Grand Inquisitor and 2 other Inquisitors moved through the area. Homes, shops, markets, cantinas, everything was bombed, and Anakin ran through the house to find his mother. She was nowhere, but suddenly Nari appeared, telling Anakin they must leave. Nari grabbed Anakin's hand, guiding him outside, and once outside, in the chaos, Anakin saw his mother running back for the house, and he was so relieved. But from around a corner, the Grand Inquisitor emerged and ignited a saber through her back. Her eyes went wide, she yelled at Anakin to run, and she fell dead. Nari yelled out in despair, force pushing the Grand Inquisitor into the wall, not thinking about how this would expose him as a Jedi. Anakin couldn't move. Tears welled in his eyes as he stared at his fallen mother. Nari began pulling him away again, then told Anakin to get behind him. The Grand Inquisitor was smiling with malice as he ran towards Nari. Anakin got behind a trash can, the blaster bolts and screams still filling his ears as he watched Nari ignite a blue lightsaber and fight the Inquisitor. But he never stood a chance. After 3 parries, Nari had his saber knocked away, and he too was stabbed through the gut. Anakin couldn't take this. He couldn't lose both Nari and his mother. And from behind the garbage can, Anakin emerged, screaming out with rage, and he pushed the Grand Inquisitor so far that he flew over the nearest line of houses. Anakin looked at his hands. He couldn't believe what he did. But he knelt by Nari, telling him they must go. But Nari touched Anakin's face, then said it was too late for him, and with a soft smile, he died. Anakin was crying, and he looked around through the chaos. He needed to escape, and through it all, he saw a fire spray ship about to take off, and Anakin sprinted for it, jumping, barely climbing into the ramp before it closed shut. And Anakin hid behind the ramp, shaking.
Downy makes clothes softer, fresher, and better. We breathe life into your laundry.
Behind the ramp, shaking, trying to calm himself, as the ship rose into the air and soon jumped to hyperspace. As Anakin took a deep breath, the owner of the ship emerged from his seat and pointed his blaster at Anakin. And the owner of the ship, Boba Fett, chuckled to himself. He couldn't believe it. The Jedi kid found his way onto his ship. And Anakin soon found himself in the co-pilot's seat, sitting silently with Boba. The bounty hunter barely spoke, and he soon told Anakin they were going to Coruscant. The reward for Jedi was substantial, but he assured Anakin that the Empire wasn't so harsh to Jedi children. At least he didn't think so. And Anakin sat in fear, trembling from what he just witnessed. He tried talking to Boba, begging him not to bring him to Coruscant. Anakin said that he just lost his mother, and he's never been without her. He rambled on, saying he feels lost, confused, angry, and Boba looked over at Anakin, but he didn't see a young Jedi anymore. He saw himself. When Boba's father died on Geonosis, he felt the same, but he didn't have anyone there to help him. He grew up in a horrible environment, but perhaps, with the right teaching, Anakin could be an excellent partner, and that in the long run would bring Boba more money. So with a sigh, Boba said that Anakin can stay with him, for now. Anakin was determined to prove that he was not just a waste of space, and Boba would quickly realize how valuable Anakin could be. The two would spend the next 5 years together, as Boba was adopting the role of an older brother of sorts, training Anakin in the ways of the bounty hunter. This, along with Anakin's time training as a Jedi, would help him evolve his skills quite well. Anakin never forgot his mother, or the man that killed her. It was on the top of his mind, and he vowed that someday, somehow, he would kill him and get revenge. The thought of his mother fueled Anakin to improve his skills every day. He was an excellent tracker. He could almost always tell when someone was lying by feeling them through the Force, and he would even learn to probe minds. Though Anakin was only a teenager, him and Boba would quickly become a feared duo in the galaxy. Anakin would not wear Mandalorian armor like Boba, instead just regular clothing with his face mostly covered with a bandana. Boba would take Anakin on many missions, and also show Anakin how he leads his own syndicate that worked through the lower levels of Coruscant and on Tatooine, a planet that Anakin quickly grew to hate because of the sand. But Coruscant was different. The first time Boba took Anakin here, he was absolutely amazed by the great city. Boba showed Anakin the Senate building, the old Jedi temple, now turned Imperial Palace, and Anakin wondered what it would have been like to grow up in the temple, and he fantasized about how if he did grow up there, perhaps he could have been the one to stop the Empire from rising. Eventually, when Anakin was 14 years old, he was on a mission to Koboh with Boba Fett to capture bounty hunter Kaj Vanda. As they came upon a cliffside, Fett and Skywalker looked down to see Vanda, and she was fighting a Jedi? This was the first Jedi that Anakin had seen since Nari, and Boba said this could get interesting. Anakin nodded and jumped down as Boba used his jetpack to fly down. And on the ground, Jedi Cal Kestis and Kaj Vanda stopped fighting as the two hunters landed beside them. Vanda was happy to see Boba, and Boba said it has been a while. Anakin stayed silent, as Cal asked if they knew each other. Vanda said they go way back, and then told Boba they should bring in the Jedi together and split the bounty. Boba and Anakin looked at each other awkwardly, and Boba said they weren't here for the Jedi. Vanda sighed, then suddenly pulled out a thermal detonator, throwing it at Boba, but Anakin reacted just in time, force pushing it away over the cliff. Boba shot Vanda through the heart, and it was over. And Cal looked to Anakin with surprise, asking who he was. Anakin replied that he was just a boy trying to make his way in the galaxy. Cal couldn't blame Anakin for not wanting to talk about the Force. The Empire was hunting anyone who used it. So Cal told Anakin to be safe, and may the Force be with him. Anakin nodded, and he left with Boba. From here, a couple more years would go by, and soon enough, Fett and Skywalker would become the top hunters for Jabba the Hutt. The two of them were quite wealthy, and one day Jabba offered them a smuggling mission, with his top smuggler, Han Solo. Fett and Skywalker had never worked with Solo, but they accepted the job. They didn't know a Wookiee would also be coming along. And it was a mission to Stujan. They were smuggling heavy weaponry crates to a group of rebellion fighters. This crime syndicate didn't choose sides, rebellion, empire, it didn't matter, as long as either side was willing to pay the price for their assistance. It was also noted that there was an imperial blockade above the planet, as it was thought that a powerful Jedi may be hiding out there. Part of Anakin wondered if he would finally see the Grand Inquisitor again, and he almost feared what he could become if he did. He was 17 years old now, and quite powerful with both the Force and bounty hunter tactics. So soon enough, Boba, Anakin, Chewbacca, and Han Solo would board the Millennium Falcon as they took off for Stujan. Anakin soon found that Boba and Han were not exactly a compatible match. Boba was extremely quiet, while Han was constantly yapping on and on about everything, and most of his witty remarks were cynical or laced with sarcasm. Anakin quietly enjoyed seeing Boba get annoyed, and he spent the trip playing Dejarik with Chewbacca, as Anakin and Chewie ended up getting along quite well. Before long, the ship would emerge from hyperspace and transmit the Imperial clearance code that Han was able to steal. They got past the blockade without much resistance, and flew down to the surface to meet these rebels. But as they flew down to the coordinates, they realized a battle was going on down below in the trees. Down in the forest, Rebellion General Obi-Wan Kenobi was defending a rebel base, as the Grand Inquisitor led a large battalion of stormtroopers towards the base. The rebel fighters were led by Cassian Andor, and with the help of Kenobi, they were holding back the Empire as the evacuation process was beginning. Kenobi had become a key leader for the rebellion after the clone uprising failed. He simply couldn't stay out of the fight, as much as he may have wanted to, and with the help of Bail Organa, Padme Amidala, Mon Mothma, and many others, the rebellion was beginning to thrive. And from the Millennium Falcon, Anakin looked to the ground and saw him, the Grand Inquisitor, the man that murdered his mother in cold blood. And now, at about 17 years old, Anakin was ready, and he simply couldn't help himself. He ran to the ramp and opened it. At once, Boba, Han, and Chewbacca all yelled at him, but Anakin simply saluted and backflipped out of the ship. As Obi-Wan looked in the distance, he saw the Grand Inquisitor approaching, and he prepared for a fight. But all of a sudden, a boy landed in front of the Inquisitor and unleashed a force push on the large group of troopers behind him. They all flew back into the trees, and Anakin looked at the Inquisitor as he asked Anakin who he was, igniting his lightsaber. Anakin yelled at him that he killed his mother, and the Inquisitor smiled, saying he has killed many mothers, and Anakin will have to be more specific. And so Anakin said he is the man that will end his life. The Inquisitor swung down at Anakin, and Anakin flipped over him, kicking him in the back, pulling out dual pistols, firing quickly at the Inquisitor. He blocked the shots, but then Anakin shot a cable that wrapped around the Inquisitor's legs. Anakin used a force pull, punching the Inquisitor in the face as he flew towards him. And then Anakin used the Force, grabbing as many nearby rocks as he could, lifting them into the air, pelting the Inquisitor. He tried to hold them off with the Force, but it was no use, and he soon fell to the ground. Anakin had caught the Inquisitor completely off guard. He was badly injured, and he tried diving at his lightsaber, but Anakin pulled it into his own hands. He spun the saber around, swinging for the Inquisitor's neck to kill him. But before the saber could cut through his neck, it was stopped with the Force. And from behind Anakin, an old Jedi appeared, holding out his hand to keep Anakin from killing the Grand Inquisitor. Rebel fighters ran out from the forest, taking out the stormtroopers that were re-emerging, as the old Jedi told Anakin to not give in to hatred, or he will be just like the Grand Inquisitor. Anakin remembered his mother, how she always wanted him to be a good man, and so he deignited the saber, and he backed up. The Grand Inquisitor scowled, said that he does not fear death, and he bit down as an electric shock filled his body and his brain as he fell dead. It was preferable to him over being a prisoner to the rebellion or returning to Darth Sidious as a failure. Anakin turned away as he died and asked Obi-Wan who he was. Obi-Wan smiled gently, then said the real question is who Anakin is. Anakin said that he was a bounty hunter, and the Millennium Falcon landed nearby. Boba, Han, and Chewbacca began unloading the weapons crates, and Obi-Wan asked Anakin if he wanted a more purposeful life, and that the galaxy could use someone with his talents. Anakin thought about it, and would spend the evening with the old Obi-Wan, talking about the possibility. Obi-Wan said that the galaxy was shrouded in darkness, but he could feel inside of Anakin that he held a great light. The two would eventually separate for the night, as Anakin and his crew were staying here overnight to regain their strength. And while sleeping, Obi-Wan Kenobi had a familiar voice come to him. It was the voice of his former master, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Qui-Gon told Obi-Wan that this boy is the chosen one, born to destroy the Sith. Obi-Wan asked who his family is, and Qui-Gon said that he has no family. He once had a mother, but no father. He was created by the Force. And so the next morning, Obi-Wan would once more ask Anakin what he wants in life. Anakin spent the night thinking about everything, and he ultimately decided that he wanted to take this next steps of his life alone. He was very mature for his age, as he was forced to really grow up after his mother died, but he'd never truly been alone.
Ordinary dish soaps
Come
can
on,
leave invisible
Ed.
grease behind. Only Dawn Platinum removes 99% of grease.
But he'd never truly been alone. Obi-Wan said that Anakin could have one of their ships, along with an R2 astromech droid that they could spare, and Anakin would spend the morning saying goodbye to Boba Fett, Han Solo, and Chewbacca. Him and Boba had spent just over a decade around each other at this point, and Boba was proud of Anakin for going out on his own. Obi-Wan decided to trust in the Force that Anakin would learn what he needs to learn on his own, but he still gave Anakin coordinates to a Jedi temple to visit. Anakin thanked everyone, and took off into hyperspace, heading immediately for this Jedi temple. And during the trip, he became friends almost immediately with the droid R2-D2, and Anakin was happy to have him along for the ride. Through the years, he lost sight of the Jedi way, but seeing Obi-Wan reignited something in him, and Anakin wanted to learn more about this side of himself. Anakin would eventually come out of hyperspace, above the planet Devaron, and he traveled through the atmosphere, above a jungle, until he came upon the temple. It was relatively small, especially compared to the one Anakin often saw on Coruscant, but it borrowed the same architecture as that one. The temple was mainly two towers that joined together with a base, and a fountain was in the middle, surrounded by ancient statues. Although the nearby plants were very overgrown, as the temple was abandoned, it was rather beautiful. But as Anakin landed and began making his way inside, he heard footsteps and voices, and from the temple doors emerged a squad of around 10 scout troopers. Upon seeing Anakin, all of them activated electro-staffs of sorts, and told Anakin to stand down. They were carrying containers of kyber crystals, and they weren't about to just let Anakin walk away. Anakin began to back up, then remembered something. He still had the Grand Inquisitor's lightsaber, so Anakin pulled it from his belt and ignited it, the crimson red glow casting it across the surface. And the scout troopers ran at him, as Anakin decided there was no better time to learn to use a lightsaber. The scouts moved in, swinging at Anakin, and with a swift stroke of his saber, Anakin disarmed one trooper, then spun around to deliver a powerful kick to another's chest, sending him sprawling. But the odds were against him, and Anakin knew he wouldn't be able to keep this up for very long. Gathering his strength, he tapped into the Force and unleashed a wave of energy, sending troopers flying in all directions. As they slowly stumbled back to their feet, Anakin readied himself once more. He continued fighting off their staffs. Anakin's movement quickly became more fluid and precise. It was like he was a natural with the blade. But with each trooper he defeated, another one seemed to take their place. Exhausted but determined, Anakin pressed on, and with a final burst of energy, he cut through the last of the scout troopers, defeating them, and moving into the temple. Inside the temple, Anakin spent hours just wondering what he was supposed to do here. It was empty and quiet. But eventually, he tried meditating, which he knew was an old Jedi tradition. And in meditation, a strange voice, one that almost spoke backward, said, "Enter the chamber, you will, and discover your destiny." Anakin opened his eyes, and a hidden door opened behind him. Anakin walked through, and in moments, the ground disappeared, replaced by just stars and open space. Anakin looked around confused, when suddenly a stick jabbed into his leg. Anakin turned to see a little green man chuckling, and asking what he seeks in the temple. Yoda could feel Anakin's power. This boy was very powerful, perhaps more powerful than any Jedi before him. And Yoda knew that he must have been the spark that he felt all those years ago. Anakin said he just wants to know his path. He feels lost, like he's being pulled in so many different directions. And Yoda said that Anakin's path is his to choose, but he can show him what it means to be a Jedi. Anakin said he does want to learn, and Yoda smiled, then spent the next hour or so giving Anakin lessons, showing him moments from the past, teaching Anakin to let go of his hatred, his anger, and his desire for revenge. And in the end, Anakin saw that the path of the Jedi would not be easy, but he felt as if it was the path he needed to take. And he even thought he could hear his mother's spirit tell him that she was proud of him. And as Anakin embraced this path, a yellow kyber crystal floated down into his hands, and Yoda disappeared. Anakin was back in the temple alone, and he spent the evening rebuilding the Grand Inquisitor's lightsaber to fit his own, then installed the yellow crystal. When he ignited it, it was perfect. And Anakin spent the next few months here, restarting training droid programs, running through the jungle with his eyes blindfolded, just learning how to truly use the Force as his ally. And he truly was strong. Months would turn into years, and 3 years would go by when Anakin felt he was finally ready for his next steps, and a visitor would come to the temple. It was Obi-Wan, and the old Jedi said that the galaxy is in need of Anakin's help. An Imperial battle station, called the Death Star, was en route to Yavin 4, the Rebel base, and the Rebels are in need of the Chosen One. This was Anakin's first time hearing the Chosen One, and it was strange, but something called at him, telling him it was right. Obi-Wan said it's time for the return of the Jedi, and Anakin said he would come, but he needs to make one final call. On the Millennium Falcon, Boba was on another mission with Han, and they were about to finally separate from each other when he got a call from Anakin. Anakin laid out that the rebellion needs help, and there is a huge payday waiting for them if they come along. Boba couldn't believe he was actually considering it, but spending so much time with Anakin made him actually want to help those in need sometimes, and a big payday could be worth it. So Boba said that the Slave One and Millennium Falcon would be coming to help. Han tried to object, but Chewbacca said they were going, and Han reluctantly agreed because of the money involved. And so, as the Death Star emerged from hyperspace above Yavin, with Emperor Palpatine on board to observe the destruction of the rebellion, the rebel fighters came to meet it, while Anakin, Han, and Boba emerged near the hangar. Han and Chewbacca flew next to the hangar, taking out the nearby turrets, shields, and TIE fighters, and allowed Anakin and Boba to enter inside. And Obi-Wan was also flying with Anakin, so now inside the Death Star hangar, taking out the nearby stormtroopers, were Boba Fett, Anakin Skywalker, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan was still an extremely capable fighter, as he'd spent the last 20 years in action on Stujan, rather than in exile on the sand planet of Tatooine. And once the hangar was cleared, the three of them ran into the halls, determined to find the Emperor. Anakin led the way, his yellow lightsaber ignited, casting a faint glow in the corridors. Obi-Wan followed closely behind, his own blade at the ready, while Boba Fett brought up the rear, his blaster rifle poised for action. And as they rounded a corner, a squad of Imperial troopers appeared, blasters raised and ready to fire. But without hesitation, Anakin leapt into action, showing off his years of training, deflecting the incoming blaster bolts with precise strokes of his lightsaber. Obi-Wan joined the fray, his movements graceful as he dispatched troopers with a series of swift strikes. Boba Fett remained at a distance, providing covering fire with his own blaster, picking off troopers with deadly accuracy. And together, the trio fought their way through wave after wave of Imperial soldiers, their determination strong as they pressed on towards their ultimate goal, confronting the Emperor. And as they neared the heart of the Death Star, the resistance grew fiercer, the troopers seemingly endless in number. But Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Boba fought on, their skill unmatched, as they carved a path through the enemy ranks. And finally, they reached the chamber where the Emperor awaited them. His presence was an aura of true darkness. With a shared glance, Anakin and Obi-Wan readied themselves for the final confrontation, while Boba went back to join the fight outside. His job in here was done, and the Jedi were ready, knowing the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. As they entered, Sidious turned in his chair and simply told the royal guards to leave them. Sidious looked out the window to Yavin, saying that in mere moments the Death Star would be ready to fire, and the rebellion would die. But Anakin said that his overconfidence was his weakness, and together, he and Kenobi charged at Sidious. Sidious was ready, and he moved with unreal speed, his attacks coming fast and relentless, each blast of lightning laced with the dark power of the Sith. Anakin and Obi-Wan fought valiantly, their skills honed by years of training and experience. Anakin as a Jedi bounty hunter, and Obi-Wan as a Jedi rebel leader, but they knew that this would be their most difficult battle yet. And as the duel raged on, the throne room became a storm of flashing sabers and crackling lightning. Anakin and Obi-Wan fought together, their movements synchronized as they sought to overcome the Dark Lord's defenses. Their differing styles blended well, as Anakin was extremely offensive, while Kenobi was on the defensive. Sidious was a master of deception and manipulation, and with each passing moment, his power seemed to grow stronger. Lightning crackled from his fingertips, arcing toward Anakin and Obi-Wan with deadly accuracy. And despite their best efforts, Anakin and Obi-Wan found themselves pushed to the brink of exhaustion. Their strength was waning as Sidious pressed his advantage, and Obi-Wan knew what he must do. He emerged from his cover, and the lightning poured into him, but he embraced it. He used the Force to hold Sidious in place, as Sidious poured lightning into him, and as Obi-Wan was sacrificing himself, Anakin leapt from his cover and sliced through Sidious's hands, then across his chest. With a roar of anguish, Sidious staggered backwards, his cloak billowing around him as he stumbled to his knees. He scowled at Anakin, saying that this was all for nothing. The rebellion could never win. And Anakin simply said, "We'll see," then spun around and cut off the Sith Lord's head. Anakin began running, grabbing Obi-Wan's unconscious body and getting to the escape pods. He could only hope that the rebellion outside could take down the Death Star. And as Anakin ejected his pod into space, Boba Fett and Han Solo flew together through the Death Star trench, and they fired their ships at the same time. It was a perfect hit, and torpedoes infiltrated the open exhaust port. Anakin looked out of the escape pod window, and the Death Star exploded into billions of pieces. They won. 1 year later, Anakin Skywalker was on Stujon with a woman named Tetha, and she was the niece of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Upon returning Obi-Wan to Stujon after the Battle of Yavin, he died and Anakin met Tetha. She had the Force, and she and Anakin quickly fell in love with each other. They had plans to rebuild the Jedi Order someday, once they knew more about the Force. And elsewhere in the galaxy, Boba Fett and Han Solo both got huge payments from the rebellion, both of them arguing over who got the final shot, but both still would work in smuggling and bounty hunting. It was just in their natures. But they were happy, and they stayed in touch with Anakin. The remnants of the Empire were being defeated slowly but surely, and a woman in her mid-40s named Padme Amidala would step in as the Chancellor of the New Republic, helping restore the galaxy to be without the tyranny of the Empire. And folks, that is where our video ends. Definitely, maybe the longest one I've ever done on my own. I know I did a 34-minute one once when I partnered with Penti Patrol Star Wars, great friend of mine. But, folks, that was a lot of fun for me. Hope you guys enjoyed as well. Let's go over a couple things. First, Anakin being born growing up. It's very complicated to just insert the main character of Star Wars in a different era, but I believe Palpatine could have risen to power without Anakin. All the events still play out, pretty similarly. I just, I had to make it work, so I did. And Anakin grows up, Nari, and is there, and the Inquisitors find him, wanted an emotional death for Anakin's mother, giving him something to fight for. I liked the idea of having Boba Fett there and seeing himself in Anakin, who just lost his mother, so I decided to turn Boba Fett into kind of a reluctant hero, kind of taking the path of the Mandalorian TV series with Grogu in a way. From there, we go on. Anakin, doesn't love the Jedi path, wants to kill the Grand Inquisitor, but Obi-Wan stops him, helping keep Anakin out of the dark side. Anakin trains, they go kill the Emperor. I had a lot of fun with this. Hope you guys enjoyed as well. I do love cameos, Cal Kestis, Han Solo, Chewbacca, R2-D2, so let me know what you thought. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.
Yep.
Are you turning your back on the moments that matter? Cascade. Dare to dish differently.
That's the end of that reaction. Alright. That's the end of that. Alright, and again, the channel he just said, PPSW. That's the channel I just did a reaction to earlier, a couple minutes ago. I just did that reaction to his channel. And yeah. The channel will be in the description below. Watch this original video. The same for PPSW. I have reacted to him before, and his videos will be in his channel in the description when I do react to his channel as well. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and this channel will be in the description below. Alright, see you next time for another reaction. Bye.